back to the Pop Cult Online Power Hour, the video podcast dedicated to the 10-year-old in all of us. And I'm your host, Rick Gordon. Well, we're back, Bob Breathall and I, and we're here to give you another episode of Australia's favorite pop culture podcast. And we'll be right back after these brief messages.
Mr. Yuck is me. Mr. Yuck is green.
Home is full of lots of things that children shouldn't touch. Home is full of bad things that can hurt you very much. Now there's a man whose face is green that you ought to get to know. He'll warn you when danger's coming fast or slow. Get to know his face in every single place. When you see it, you'll know quick. Things marked yuck make you sick, 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 sick. Mr. Yuck is me. Mr. Yuck is green.
Hey there.
Yo, can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you fine.
Your
picture's you're a little fuzzy. You're a little out of focus.
Let me see. Sure that's just not how I look?
Nah. Something's off.
How about now?
Oh, better. Yeah, there we go.
How about now?
Yeah,
is that better?
Perfect.
Okay. I didn't realize there was a focus on this webcam.
I didn't realize that either.
I must have bumped it and taken it out of focus.
This is my 1970 Jack Kirby gangster look. I'm just a nondescript background thug. Who just happens to have a futuristic looking gun.
Pew!
So it's been a couple weeks. For our regular listeners, viewers, I have been busy with school. I went back to school. I guess it's not really going back to school since I never really went to college anyway. So I just took a very long 30-year break between semesters. So now that I've got my rhythm down, got my workflow going the way it should be, we're back on a regular schedule, and I feel so much smarter. I have to wear the hat to keep my head from just expanding like the leader.
You got rhythm, you got music. You got your gal who could ask for anything more.
And my gal will be Supergirl, which I haven't seen yet, but from all the buzz on the internet, everybody is thrilled about it. Did you watch it?
Not everybody.
Okay.
I liked it, but it's the internet.
Mm-hmm.
So there will be people bitching and moaning because it's not exactly what they had in their head that it should be.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, that goes without saying.
I liked it more than I didn't like it. I mean, I thought that the DEO was a little bit overdone. I think that I don't know if you read the comics when the DEO was in it.
No.
It's the Department of Extra Normal or Extra Human Affairs or something. It's like, I don't know what the O is. I mean, it's the Department of Extra Human Operations or something. But they always seem to have a point of conflict in these TV shows, you know? You can't, so you got Supergirl and Superman.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you look at the Zack Snyder Superman movie, which you inexplicably loved. And, I guess Superman in that gave the government a really good reason to not trust him since he destroyed Metropolis and killed millions of people while fighting Zod instead of just flying him up to the moon or something.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I can see in the Snyderverse that Superman is not the popular sort of hero that he is in like pretty much every other, you know, incarnation of Superman, where he's just like this benevolent big blue Boy Scout who everybody loves, you know, and that he's just like this psychotic alien who destroys cities and kills people.
Undocumented alien.
Yeah, undocumented alien worker. So, and you enjoy that.
I'm not going to deny. I got a kick out of it.
So in Supergirl, you know, it's not they don't mention Superman by name.
Mm-hmm.
He appears in like kind of out of focus and and they talk about my cousin.
I think they mentioned Kal-El, but they never said the word
Kal-El.
Yeah.
They don't ever say Superman.
I wonder if that's a rights issue.
It's got to be.
Because
you know,
remember the whole Superboy thing.
Superman,
yeah.
You know, but they have the rights to Supergirl.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of weird. But anyway, so you have this DEO that is getting all up in Kara's nose, you know, wanting to like keep track of what, you know, has got going on there. And there's this, they come off as the people making it like have like some deep-seated suspicions of authority in the government, because, you know, whenever you have a government agency, they're always really hardcore douche nozzles, you know. On like most TV shows, like any kind of government organization, these people are the biggest jackasses in the world, and, you know, really sinister and stuff. So,
now I'm wondering if they're going to start introducing, you know, Easter eggs and, you know, special guest stars. That seems to be the normal thing that they do now. I mean, you're watching Flash, you enjoy it, but you like it even better if they bring in a character that you know that the general public doesn't know. Do you think that's a trend that's going on right now?
I think so. I mean, I don't want to spoil Supergirl for you because you haven't seen it. I mean, they introduce like the main bad guy is, as far as I'm aware, somebody that they pulled out of thin air and created, just to be, you know, the bad guy, the big bad guy for the series. And when you see it, I'll be interested in your take on it, because it's just like, it's really off the wall, out of left field kind of bad guy.
I
guess they couldn't use General Zod, so, you know, it's...
Well, not till he comes back in the next movie.
Yeah. It's just like the next best thing to General Zod, you know.
The last time I seriously read Supergirl, and I'm not exaggerating, had to be in 72, 73, sometime around there. When she was wearing hot pants. That's when I was reading Supergirl.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
So you didn't even see when she had the headband and the skirt.
I've got all those books, but they just, for some reason, they never stuck with me. I think because that incarnation of Supergirl that I started with, that's the one that imprinted, where she's just she's flying around and just, you know, curing social injustices, because that's what heroes did back in those days. You know, there were no...
I never read DC in the 70s, so I didn't really have any of that stuff imprint on me, because I read it as back issues.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so it was easy to get those back issues when I started reading DC, but I didn't really start reading DC until the late 70s, early 80s. You know, I was a Marvel guy through when I started. I just read Marvel for the first, you know, several years, until, you know, from 70 through probably 76, 78-ish. It was just Marvel. And then I moved out into other things. But, you know, I went into DC right at the same time I was going into all the indie books. So to me, DC isn't any higher up the, you know, the chain of nostalgia than, you know, like Eclipse or... Right. First Comics or ElfQuest or Cerebus, Shatter, any of that kind of stuff that came out back then. I mean, I liked it, and I liked, I guess in one respect it was because there was so much more of a backstory, and I just gobbled up lots of back issues out of, quarter boxes and stuff, and read a lot of, this almost all of the 70s stuff was readily available, cheap, in the early.
I think we're on to something here.
You couldn't go way back into the 60s necessarily for cheap, but pretty much the whole Bronze Age. Which
yeah, beautiful segue. I was just about to mention that. Ooh, baby. Oh, and it is bronze.
Yeah. So the Bronze Age of DC Comics. This is not an open copy. Let me open this one up.
I would love to get that autographed by Paul Levitz.
Yeah, they sent me a box of these.
Really?
Yeah. A box of 5. So...
can hand them out at Halloween.
Yeah, I'll be giving some out at Christmas. But
look at that.
It's a nice book. Oh, look what page I open it up to. I love that.
Oh, look at that.
That is my copy too. So, I probably not all of the stuff in here is from my collection because I didn't help them with the original big book that they did,
right?
But on this one, the help that I gave them was on this volume alone, because when they made that big 75 years of DC Comics tome. So, when they did that for Marvel, I was kind of right there from the get-go, and, a lot of the books in that are for my collection. On DC, they weren't working with me when they did the 75 years of DC. So all they did with me was when they made this, and even when they made the individual volumes for gold and silver. So when they did this volume, they worked with me, and I probably gave them a couple of long boxes full of stuff to take pictures of for this book. So, there's a couple of 200, 300, 400 comics that I provided them, and other miscellaneous stuff that they took pictures of for this book, because they added a lot. The Bronze Age in that 75 years of DC Comics, if you've seen it or have it, they have the Golden Age, the Silver Age, the Bronze Age, the Dark Age, I think, and the Modern Age. So, and each one of those is, like 100, 120 pages, whereas this book is, about 400 pages just on the Bronze Age. So they added, a good 250, at least around 250 pages of Bronze Age stuff, which... I don't think Paul Levitz really wrote any additional text. They just, kind of spread out and added a lot more pictures and, captions and stuff of more stuff. Just more indicative stuff that it really is DC in the Bronze Age. But that was kind of my entree into DC as the Bronze Age. I started in the 80s, but I kind of was right on that edge, because really the next age to me didn't really start until Dark Knight and Crisis and all that,
Watchmen,
new Teen Titans and all that kind of stuff, which was up into the 80s a little bit. So I was in on the tail end of the Bronze Age, and like I said, it was pretty easy to go back and pick up a lot of the Bronze Age books back then.
Well, here's my dilemma. And it's not really a dilemma. I've got the 75 years of Marvel. Now, we all know I'm a Marvel zombie from the get-go. But I was reading other books. I thought about this. I had a flashback the other night. I remember reading comic books, and I had to be 4 or 5 years old because there was this little diner that my mother would go to while my dad was at work, and this was before I was in school. So, and they had a magazine rack, and on the bottom part of the rack they had comics, and I distinctly remember seeing Archie comics, Sad Sack, just kid stuff, no superhero stuff. That didn't come until a couple of years later when I got the Star Spangled War stories that started me. That was the first book I picked up and read and retained. And
don't cross the street in the middle, in the middle, in the middle, in the middle, in the middle of the block. Don't cross the street in the middle, in the middle, in the middle, in the middle, in the middle of the block. Teach your eyes to look up, teach your ears to hear. Walk up to the corner where the coast is clear, and wait until you've seen the light turn green. Don't cross the street in the middle, in the middle, in the middle, in the middle, in the middle of the block. Don't cross the street in the middle, in the middle, in the middle, in the middle, in the middle of the block. Don't cross the street in the middle, in the middle, in the middle, in the middle, in the middle of the block. Teach your eyes to look up, teach your ears to hear. Walk up to the corner where the coast is clear, and wait until you've seen the light turn green. Don't cross the street in the middle, in the middle, in the middle, in the middle, in the middle of the block. Don't cross the street in the middle, in the middle, in the middle, in the middle, in the middle of the block.
She's a sleeping woman with a summer face, campfire girl, all wrapped up in everything, campfire girl, attitudes are early spring, campfire girl, she's still unfolding, finding out, campfire girl, she'll grow on trust and not on doubt, campfire girl, campfire girl, campfire girl, read her eyes, you'll see they say she's free, campfire girl, campfire girl.
the thing about Marvel was I didn't see any Marvel probably until the early 70s. All I had seen were Archie's, Harvey's, DC. So I did pick up DC here and there, but not to the extent when I started seeing Marvel. I don't know if it was a distribution problem or what, because it wasn't there, and then all of a sudden that's all there was. So I started scooping up all the Marvel books because we all know in the Marvel universe it's all tied in. They're making references to other stories, so I run out and I get the other story, get the other book. Spider-Man, he's got 5 books. I'm going to get all 5 of those. I'm going to get all these. So the next thing you know, I'm getting 20, 30 books a month, and it's not enough. So then I got to start picking up DC. Probably the 100-page Giants did it for me. Those were the books that I really focused on, because you could, the DC comics are done in one. You don't really need a lot of backstory. You're just reading an adventure and you're throwing it away. And so I'm torn. Do I get the 75 years of DC as a completist? Because the Golden Age stuff, maybe. But the Bronze Age might be a better fit for me, because that's when I jumped in.
On the plus side of the big one is, I would say what you might want to do is get the 75 years and then get the individual Bronze Age one on top of it.
Okay.
Because I don't believe they're going to make individual volumes for the for the 80s and for the later stuff. Mm-hmm. So there's that stuff you'll get there. And it's interesting to see the older stuff, especially the Silver Age stuff from DC. I mean, there was, Silver Age DC that really started the superhero revolution. Because if you wouldn't have had Silver Age DC with the Justice League and the
Flash,
you
and
know,
Green
the
Lantern,
sci-fi revivals of Flash and Green Lantern and Hawkman and Atom, I don't think Marvel would have started the way that Marvel started.
No, because they started as a reaction to what was going on at DC.
That stuff being successful. Now they did the way that they did it resonated with the readers, especially the teenage and college age readers, much better than DC, which back then was much more in the we're telling stories and our audience is turning over every 4 years, and aging out, and we don't have to worry about them anymore. So they weren't as big on a lot of that stuff. Which it's interesting, different things that'll excite you when you've been reading comics for different amounts of time, and before you've been beaten over the head, and it's like anything. You can watch something, and when they drive a trope into the ground on you through just horrendous repetition, you get sick of it, right?
Yes.
And it's just like, oh my God, zombies. I'm so over zombies. I still like Walking Dead, but there was it's tailing off a bit, but there were a few years there where you couldn't turn around without seeing zombie this and zombie that.
Oh yeah.
And it's still kind of going, because I'm seeing commercials for Scout's Guide to the Zombie Apocalypse that's coming out, and they're coming out with another zombie TV show. They've got iZombie on, which bears little resemblance to the Vertigo series other than the look of the main character in the title. They basically took that whole book and they turned it into a police procedural.
Oh boy.
I'm not a fan, but other people might like it. That's not to say that it's a bad show. It's just it falls far short of what the comic was. But what I'm kind of getting at is, when I started reading Marvel, having the crossovers, that was cool to me, because I wanted to find out about these characters. It's like Marvel, like you'd have this interconnection, and I was just reading Spider-Man, but they used to throw Spider-Man into everything. So I remember when I started reading Cap, they had that cover with the big Spider-Man and the buildings. You remember that one?
Yes.
And you had Falcon and Cap. And I bought that issue of Captain America. And I'm like, oh, this is pretty cool. And I started reading Captain America. And then I started reading Avengers, and it's like I went into a lot, Marvel Team Up,
Yeah.
Start reading Marvel Team Up.
Gateway book.
All of a sudden, oh, that's a cool character. Let me find out about that character.
Right.
They didn't really have, and, we've talked about the Avengers Defenders War before.
Yep.
That kind of, I was reading Avengers at that point in time. I had started reading Avengers around issue 106-ish.
Yeah.
And, that came out of 116, so maybe a little less than a year after I started reading Avengers. And then that got me to start reading Defenders.
But you know what? The thing about that book was, in our young minds, heroes don't fight each other. What is going on? I've got to get these books to find out why they're fighting each other, because that never happened in the DC world. They may bicker. But
well, to me, it was kind of standard operating procedures, because I never read the DC books at that point. So it was just like, hey, these guys meet each other. They got to, throw a few punches before they decide.
That's how they say hi.
Get along with each other, But, so I didn't mind having the crossovers that went into it. But even though, looking back, you say Marvel did it all the time, they didn't really do it all the time. I mean, they did it enough that you would get the tendrils. A lot of it more was Stan's soapbox and those little crawls on the bottom of the page where it would say, hey, Doctor Strange is doing blah, blah, blah this month. And you go, oh, that sounds it. Let me look at that. It wasn't like really in your face where, even when they did kind of a crossover, Spider-Man would come into Captain America, and then that would be the story. It was rare like Avengers, Defenders War, and a few others, that you had to buy another comic book that you weren't already buying
Right.
in order to get a complete story.
Right.
I mean, it happened, but it wasn't happening all the time.
Not the way it is now.
Now, when they do comic things, they do these crossovers where, I mean, you can't read an X-Men book for 6 months without it getting pulled into some crossover with all the other X-Men books, you know, and that's been going on for
Forever.
15 years, you know, at least, maybe 20 years. So the people who read and love X-Men, they tend to read the bulk of the X-Men titles, and they, I'm guessing, you know, write your cards and letters if you disagree if you're an X-Men fan, but to me, you can't be that put off by that if you're an X-Men fan. Because if you were, you wouldn't be reading X-Men books, because
Right.
they do it so frequently. And that's what's really kind of kept me from getting back into the X-Men, because, you know, I try to read one X-Men book, and 3 issues later it's pulled into some big crossover, and suddenly, and especially now that comics are $4 a pop, it's like, I can't, you know, if I have to buy a 12-part crossover, that is $50, you know.
Yeah,
It's
and
like,
it better be
come on.
spectacular.
Yeah, they're usually, you know, sort of mediocre as these things go.
I'm trying to think back to when I was when I worked in the comic shop, because something you said just triggered. We had our poll. We had our subscribers. You know, the guys that would put aside their books every month. We had a handful of guys that would just buy everything. You know, they'd come in once a week and drop $100, and then we had people that would buy just like, I know this one guy, all he read was X-Men in every X book, and that was it. You could not talk this guy into getting anything else. It was kind of weird. We had guys like that who were like that with Batman. Some guys were like that with Superman. It struck me as odd, because I had always been a voracious reader, and I wanted to read as much as I could. I may enjoy a certain title more so than others, but I'm not going to not read a book. I mean, I was just reading this just before and that's not something
April.
that's not something people think about when they think of me. They think of, you know, Batman, Spider-Man, Superman, not 8-Ball. But I enjoy it. So it's strange. Readers are a strange breed of cat.
The toy gallery, the toy gallery, the toy gallery, the toy gallery, the toy.
Who says that you have to be a kid to have fun? So you're all grown up. Let the little kid inside you run wild. Visit the Toy Gallery at 1825 North Lincoln in Chicago.
The toy gallery, the toy gallery, the toy.
Well, it's funny because, you know, you look at the guys who read, you know, like an X-Men sort of, you know, they're the X-Men guy, and the companies know that they've got those kinds of readers, because that's why they know that more people are going to, you know, expand out and buy more comics. You know, like if they have an X-Men reader who isn't you know, I think there's X-Men readers who buy all the X-Men books, and then there's X-Men readers who buy religiously, you know, the top 2 or 3 X-Men books, and they don't get all the others. But every 6 months when they do the crossover, they're not put off by, okay, well, I'll buy, you know, Cable and X-Force and whatever the hell all the other ones are that it ties into, you know, to get the complete story. That doesn't, you know, send them spinning off and, you know. But, you know, for me, it's like I'm buying, you know, so many comics. I get like 100 comics or something. And I do that by, like, not buying every single Marvel comic anymore. You know, it's like, you know, Marvel puts out 60 or 70 comics, you know, and DC puts out, you know, with Vertigo, I added in the mix the same thing, 60 or 70 comics. And you know, right there, if you just bought Marvel and DC, you're buying 140 comics, and that's not counting the, you know, 50 or so comics Image puts out and the 20 comics Dark Horse puts out. You know, so I have to be very selective on what I get. And to me, it's like I'm more limited by the amount of time I want to spend on reading the books. So I kind of don't want to read another 10 Marvel books. You know, that's why I tend to, you know, on Marvel and DC, I'm a little harder on them. If they try to pull me into a crossover, I'm more likely nowadays, different than when I was a kid and I only read superhero comics, you know, when I was a young, you know, mostly read, let's say mostly, because I started reading non-superhero comics pretty young. But, you know, I would mostly read those books, and it also wasn't that bad because they were $0.25 a piece or 30 cents a piece. So, you know, you throw a few extras in, you know, hey, you can scrounge up an extra buck, you know, to pick up these extra. And that's the other thing. When they had a crossover, it would cross over into like one other book that month or two, maybe. You know, so you're talking like less than $1. Whereas now, they'll cross it over into 5 extra books at $4 a piece. That's $20. You know, you go from something that wasn't really, you know, you could find 60 cents even then, even in the late 70s. You could find that in between the seat cushions of the car, you know, or something. You know, now where are you going to get $20? I mean, that's a couple hours of work. It's like 3 hours of work after taxes at a minimum wage job. You know, and
or
it's
I just sneak into my wife's purse.
Yeah, but you know, it's a very different equation, value equation for people to make on. You know, it never really felt like I was being manipulated, and maybe also you didn't have the internet, you didn't have it wasn't as obvious, you know. It's like, especially you're younger now, I sit back and I read the solicits stuff, and it's so easy to see because I watch the sales numbers and I watch this and that, and it's like, you know, when they do this stuff, it's just so obvious that they're just blatantly doing it to reach in the wallet of their hardcore fans, and they're not expanding their readership by trying to go out and find new people. They're just strip mining the existing readers.
Right. I felt that way with Reign of the Supermen. That was the first time that it really bothered me what I had to go through to get through that story. Even as far as like the alternate numbering of the books.
Well, that went on for the triangle numbering. That went on for years.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Where the story kind of loosely flowed weekly through the 4 different Superman titles. And then they started doing that over in Spider-Man. Because doing it with Superman, what the hell? You know, let's put out 4 Spider-Man books.
Yeah, that was the first time that it really, I like you said, I felt manipulated. But I was an adult. I've a comic collector all my life, and my attitude is, what am I going to do? I got to read these stories. So I didn't have a choice. You know, I had to go out and buy a bunch of books I really didn't want.
Yeah. Well, we had to, right?
Yeah. Well, it's part of our compulsion.
It's a mixed blessing of them renumbering a book every year. Because on one hand, it really bothered me as a collector when they first started doing it, right? It's like, oh, they're breaking the chain. You know, I no longer have, you know, Superman 653, but you know what? If they had never broken the chain on Superman, I would be buying Superman right now. I'm not buying Superman. I'm not buying Batman. I'm not buying Green Lantern because they restarted them. It's like, well, I have every issue, you know, within reason. I mean, I have pretty much every issue of Green Lantern. Superman and Batman, I got back to, you know, 200 or something. And, you know, I have that, and now they have a new one, and it's like, well, it's something different. Marvel does the same thing. They can barely go a year without restarting a series over there. So now it's just I just jump off of books. If another thing is like they change creative teams continually.
Mm-hmm.
This is another thing that I enjoy about creator-owned books, because I don't have to worry about picking up an issue of Usagi Yojimbo or Gru being done by some random dude, and it like is not the same. It's just like Stan Sakai does every. If he needs to take a break and do something else, well, we don't get an issue for a year. It's not like they have to crank one out with just some random guy doing it.
Right.
And, the same thing with any creator-owned book. I don't mind, like Saga, one of my favorite books by Brian K. Vaughan and Fiona Staples. They do a story arc and then they take a break for a few months to go do some other things. And that's fine, because I would rather have that than have, some other team come in and do something, which may or may not be up to the same standard. I think with a creator-owned book, if they did bring in a guest artist or a guest writer, it's usually going to be one of their buddies, and they have ultimate quality control, so it probably wouldn't be that bad. But Marvel and DC, I kind of get the feeling they don't really give that much of a crap. It's like they're putting in we need to get this one out, and these guys weren't available. So
everybody's got to start sometime.
I am fascinated that it's like, seriously, there's an art director that works at DC, and they let this get published. It's like they're doing their job in what way? And I'm talking about just like. I'm not talking about artistic taste. I'm talking about lack of being able to draw proper human anatomy, not having
just basic draftsmanship,
horizon lines, basic. It's like violating the 180-degree rule all over the place. You see a street scene and it looks like the sidewalk is wider than the part that cars drive on. It's just like, what is this? Or my favorite is scenes that take place on airplanes that look like they were drawn by a person who's never actually been on an airplane. Because there's like about 3 feet of room in between the seats. It's just like people are standing up. It's like, these aren't people in first class. It's just like, these are coach seats.
Oh my God. Hey, let's go back to the number thing. When I was younger, that was a very, very big deal for me, because when you're 9 or 10, you really don't work with spreadsheets a lot or, anything fancy. So
there's no such thing as a spreadsheet.
Right.
It's called an index card.
Not even that. I kept everything up here, and it was all a numbers game, and that's how I tracked my collection, because I could tell you what numbers were missing out of the sequence. And once they started fucking around with that, that's when I kind of got a little squirrely about the whole thing. Because I knew that the Thor book had a higher number than everybody else's book. And I knew approximately where everybody was numerically. And then it just went all out the window.
Well, it's even worse than that with all the variant and chase covers that they have now.
Oh, God.
It's like, you used to be able to go and you'd look at the comics and say, oh, well, I've never seen that cover before. I obviously don't have that issue. Now it's like every number one comes out with 20 different covers at least, or something, it seems. And I'm exaggerating, like the big ones. Like Spider-Man literally had 20 or 30 covers.
Good
the
Lord.
Star Wars number one, I think there were like 100 different covers to it. In fact, I didn't buy them, but I bought this book.
Oh, cool. What is that?
It's the Marvel covers. It's like, it's all the different covers to Star Wars number one are reproduced.
Oh my God, you were kidding me.
In this giant art book, and it's kind of cool because they got the the black and white original art, and then they got the finished cover here.
I like that.
But I mean, I'm paging through this thing, and I'm like, holy crap! Look how many covers there were. You know, it's just like, I mean, I'm looking at, this is a 200 and some page book.
Oh, geez.
And it's basically got the variant covers to the first few issues of Star Wars, Darth Vader, and the Princess Leia series. And it's like, oh my lord. You know, it's like they were just cranking out covers, and there were people who were buying them. You know, wow. It's like, oh, give me all of them. That's why Star Wars, ever since Star Wars came out back in like January, February of this year, every month, top 10, it's the Star Wars books. Star Wars, Star Wars, Star Wars. And they even crowded Batman out of the top 10 one month.
Wow. Huh.
I mean, Batman wasn't even in the top 10 one month a couple of months ago.
Wow.
It's just Marvel, it's like Secret Wars and Star Wars. The S-Wars have been very good to Marvel this year. I mean, they've been just dominating the sales with all these books that come out. And in many part, on the Star Wars book, there's so many variant covers, and there are so many Star Wars fans who buy these multiple covers, so they're double, triple, quadruple, and more dipping into these fans' wallets. And, you think of it, you're really crowding out. In some cases, you're crowding out other Marvel books, but a lot of times it's just like these people aren't going to buy any indie books or DC books because they spent all their money on buying Marvel comics and all the variant covers of Marvel comics.
How long do you think?
Like father, like son. Father, like son. Think about it. For information on smoking and heart disease, ask your heart association.
Make sure you don't blow it, and make sure they know it. You mind very much if they smoke.
It's a matter of life and breath.
I think that'll last, though. The Star Wars thing. I mean,
the Star Wars thing, well,
it's hard to say.
Frankly, the weird part about it is the comics are really good. I've been reading them, and they are the best Star Wars comics I've probably ever read. They're, orders of magnitude better than the, 70s Star Wars series, that dragged that giant green rabbit in by issue 7 or 8. Just, the
Jackson.
They're putting top tier artists and top tier writers, and they're really well done for the most part comics. And you got the movie that's coming out this Christmas, and it's just like there is a Star Wars fanaticism right now.
Oh yeah, it's crazy.
It's going to go on at least through next year at some point.
I think this can go for a couple of years.
It can go for a while, and especially if they keep on turning out really high quality, really high quality comics. It's just, that's the thing. It's not like you're buying it and you're opening it up and saying, "Oh my lord, what is this garbage?" It's just, "Oh well, I'm buying it because it's Star Wars. It's no good. I'm just gonna, But these I buy them anyway, and I read them, and I'm like, it's a pretty decent story. I really enjoyed that. So it's not like, I'm not buying the multiple covers, but it's a added benefit that they actually do them, and they're really good. Whereas I look at a lot of the tie-ins, like I had picked up over the years Star Wars comics when they're coming out from Dark Horse, and some of them were pretty good. But a lot of them I picked up and I'd read, and they were really confusing, and it was like a bunch of expanded universe characters who I didn't know who the hell anybody was.
Right.
And it was just like, you know, I don't know what's going on. I don't know who any of these people are. The art is okay, but it's nothing spectacular. And then you put it down, and I think for the most part, those comics were read by the really hardcore Star Wars fans, but not like your casual fan. Now, Marvel gets the property, and, you know, they are featuring Luke, Han, Leia, Chewbacca, Lando Calrissian, Darth Vader. You know, it's like all the characters that everybody knows and wants to see and knows who they are. And, you know, it's just, it's you know, kind of filling in the gap. At least the main Star Wars comic is filling in between what I always will call the first Star Wars movie and Empire Strikes Back, right? So episodes 4 and 5.
Right.
It's in between those two. And then they just started one called Shattered Empire that is after, it starts after the Death Star 2 gets blown up at the end of Jedi, and it's going to bridge in between there and The Force Awakens.
Okay.
That's coming.
Has Star Wars been continually published since, I don't know, the early 80s?
I would say pretty much, yeah. I mean, Dark Horse had that license for a really long time. I mean, they've got to put out hundreds, if not thousands, of Star Wars comics over the years. And I think somebody else might have had the license at some point, but Dark Horse had it for a good long time. But, you know, even Star Wars from Dark Horse, they did a credible job of them. I mean, they had decent people on it, and I think it was more like they had their hands tied by Lucas, really.
Yeah.
I think, because they were not allowed to, you know, they weren't doing canon stories, right? And they weren't allowed to use certain characters in certain situations, or if they were always kind of like what if or imaginary stories, whereas, you know, whatever, right? But since Disney owns Marvel and Disney owns Star Wars and Disney, you know, it's all the same thing. These stories are official canon Star Wars stories, right? And that also makes it, because it's like it's all fiction, but it counts,
right?
So that makes it different. But you know, you look over at some of the other licensed comics that have been put out over the years, and I'm looking at Doctor Who comics, Star Trek,
back and forth between publishers.
Doctor Who, Transform, you know, any of these.
Tarzan.
A lot of these comics come out, and you know, they're okay, but they just, you know, they don't have that same top tier talent on them. And I think it really makes a difference, you know. So,
well, that could just be the company thinking that just the name alone will sell this book. You know, we don't have to, you know, tie up our top guys with it. You know, it's Tarzan.
Right.
Who's not going to buy a Tarzan book in 2015?
Yeah.
Huh.
So, I mean, they've been doing a good job of it. So, I mean, it's going to go for a good long while. But, you know, it's just, it shows that if you take a popular property and market it the right way and put good creators on it, people will buy it. But I think it also goes to show that the sheer act of putting a Marvel logo in the upper corner of a comic book will cause it to sell, you know, 2 to 10 times what it would sell with the logo of a smaller publisher on it.
Interesting.
You know, I mean, because Marvel's, Star Wars is coming back to Marvel, and it's like as if Star Wars comics were not being published for 10 years. And it's like people were, oh my God, they're making Star Wars comics. They've been making Star Wars comics all along,
Yeah.
But nobody seemed to care. But now you slap a Marvel logo in the corner, and everyone is like buying the hell out of these books. And again, certainly they've got some different talent on it, but it's not like they had, they did several series over the years that had top-notch people on it from Dark Horse.
Mm-hmm.
I remember the Crimson Empire books that had Paul Galassi art that were really nice.
Yeah,
I remember that. But I mean, I don't think they sold a fraction of what, if they would have had a Marvel logo on them. Come on.
And here's the unfortunate thing: with all the great Star Wars comics that are out there, the only books that stick in my head were the early ones. And as much as I love Carmine Infantino, I just couldn't take his style with that particular book.
Yeah,
it just didn't work for me, and he was the artist on that book for forever. I
couldn't. That original run of Star Wars, I didn't make it past issue somewhere in the teens.
Yeah. I mean, I bought it out of rote, just because I'm a collector, but I can't, there's a big blank spot. The first 20-some-odd issues.
Later on, I went back and bought them. I mean, and they weren't really at the time when I bought them. They were in 50-cent bins,
Mm-hmm.
Not hard to come by. When I filled in my run of Star Wars, it just, heck, it got canceled, right?
Yeah. It did get better, though. I mean, there was Al Williamson art towards the end there that I really enjoyed. And I don't even know who wrote the thing. Who was the writer on that?
I mean, again, I wasn't really it wasn't...
Listen, I've always been a fan of writers. I'm a writer's guy, and for the life of me, I have no idea who wrote that book. None. I remember Chaykin, with the ghost of Alex Toth with the first couple of issues, and I couldn't tell you who wrote the book. God.
You want me to tell you? I can look it up.
Look it up.
Okay.
It could be just because I'm middle-aged now and I'm forgetting stuff exponentially.
I have a feeling that it was like some writer that we kind of revere, but maybe they just were not catching a sweet spot with us on...
Steve Englehart seems to stick in my head. Maybe not.
Let's take a look. So, in the early issues, let me look at those... The one where they have that... So... Roy Thomas was writing it when they stuck that goofy green rabbit in it.
Oh, boy.
My lord. Okay.
Oh, boy.
Jump forward into the 70s. Archie Goodwin.
Okay. Yes.
Archie
now
Goodwin,
it's coming back.
He's a good writer, but he was writing it for a good long time. I mean, let me pop forward another couple of years. David Michelini or Michelini.
Yeah.
I don't know how you pronounce that guy's name.
And I only know that because of bullpen bulletins. And I mean,
these are writers who, Mary Jo Duffy.
Oh, okay.
I mean, these are not bad writers. I mean, it's just they were just not. Yeah, those are the three. Between the three of them, I think they wrote a lot of. I mean, hell, you had Ken Stacy doing art on the.
Oh, yes, that's right.
I'm like, dang,
it's all coming back.
But I didn't care for it that much.
No,
I mean,
it was okay.
Sal Buscema. So, a lot of spittle lines on people's mouths and wide open mouths and such going on.
I can imagine.
Bob McLeod with Tom Palmer inking.
Ooh, that sounds tasty.
these are decent creators. Mm-hmm. Bob Layton.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, it's not like they were putting the back of the bench on these. Walt Simonson wrote some issues.
Wow.
So
see, yeah,
I don't know.
I can see Simonson doing a book like that. And I could also see the early issues, maybe Steve Gerber or Bill Mantlo. Yeah, I love Archie Goodwin as a writer, but I don't know if that was a good fit for him.
Mike W. Barr. It's just like it's a who's who of like Marvel's stable of writers and artists. We're putting this book together. So it's not like it was bad creators, but it just never clicked. I mean, the sales just kept going down and down on it, which ironically, when they canceled it, it was probably selling, 350,000 copies.
When was the last issue of that book?
Which is about what, the new one's selling, and it's like a runaway #1 selling hit. So
when did that book end?
Went up to about issue 106, 107.
So it had a healthy run.
September 86.
Wow. Okay.
So Whilce Portacio inked the last issue.
Whoa.
So it went from July of 77 through September of 86, so 9 years.
Yeah. And I would imagine that it's hard to keep up that momentum when you realize that there are not going to be any more movies. Because when did Return of the Jedi? That was 85, I think, or 80. What was that? No, it was before that, right? 82 or 83?
IMDb.com.
I should know this. I think it was a long time between the two.
83.
83, okay.
So it went on for like 3 years after the last movie, and then just kind of faded away.
Just kind of petered out, yeah.
And they had some miniseries in there. I think they did adaptations of Empire and Return of the Jedi as side miniseries.
Marvel Super Specials. You know what? I can't remember where I read it first. It might have been the Treasury edition that came out, because I think I read the Treasury edition before I actually saw the movie. So the movie was completely spoiled. Completely spoiled.
Well, I mean, they had a lot of differences because they created that comic before the movie came out off of a not final version of the script. So there were differences.
I think I know it's around here somewhere. You know how I love my Treasury editions.
Yeah, Treasury editions are cool.
Yeah, they are. Well, not so much anymore because I'm big, so they don't seem as massive as they did when I was a kid. When I was a kid, it was like, I'd see my dad reading the newspaper, and I'd pull out my Treasury edition and just,
So have you seen that car commercial with Jaleel White in it? Driving the Chevy Scion. Do you pull your Urkel doll out?
Yes, I did see
clap
that.
while you're watching that? Or he's driving in the car with the life-size wax figure of Urkel.
I saw it, and all I could wonder is, where can I get one for my very own? This is going to creep people out. Urkel's watching it. I can see everybody.
That doll actually looks less dorky than the kid actually did.
I would really like to have a life-size version of me to put into the car to freak people out. Because that's just the kind of weirdo I am.
He grew up pretty good because he's nowhere. He looks like a pretty good-looking young guy. He's not like really weird-looking. He didn't
wind up going crazy or dead.
Yeah, he's
or...
not snorting cocaine off a hooker's butt or anything. He's not like, who's the Odom?
Oh, jeez, yeah. That train wreck. All right, I've got a heart out. I got to get out of here.
Okay.
Here's the good news. I've had issues with the internet for some time now. It's degrading to the point where it's almost unusable. But up the street there's FiOS, and we all know. Well, maybe we don't know, but I know somebody who knows somebody, and I will probably be getting FiOS shortly, like within the next few days or week. And once that happens, the whole world is just going to be better. Because I've had some issues with uploading. It just takes forever. I'll try to do it while I'm asleep. Something will get corrupted. Got to start it all over again. So that's where that is. But I'm going to keep trying until we get those things up there, because this will be number 3 in the can that we don't have up yet. So we'll get there. And,
very cool. Well,
we'll have to do this again real soon, because it's good to be back in the saddle.
I'm going to Kamikaze this weekend for Halloween. See how that goes.
Cool. Tell Stan I said hello.
It's looking to be I'm mixed emotions about that show. It's really a pop culture show. It's not really a comic show at all. I mean, even less so than things that call themselves Comic-Cons and sort of have. I mean, this is like, there's virtually nothing on the schedule of panels that's anything to do with comics. Even like, I'm looking at the schedule and it's like Marvel versus DC, and that's usually a good nerd fest. And it's like, I read the description and it's Marvel movies versus the DC movies.
Oh, God.
It's not even even that's not, even Marvel versus DC is not the comics at the show. It's just, everything is something on YouTube, off the internet, a cartoon, a TV show. They've got burlesque dancers. They've got just like cosplay, this and that, and it's like it'll be even less comics than last year, at least from what I can see in the schedule. So I'll be interested to see how it goes.
We'll get your report and we'll talk about it on the next episode. Cool. All right, buddy. Good talking to you, and I'll talk to you soon. Hopefully, maybe in the next couple of days we'll get something going.
Okay. Check out ComicSpectrum.com.
Comic Spectrum. We almost forgot. Oh, my God. Bye, everybody.
Comics.